Hey everyone, welcome to the XP Gaming Podcast. With me tonight, as always, is Ronald, aka Eric, and as for me, my name is Mike, aka MTBtrigger, and tonight, whenever you're checking this out, we've got a special guest on this episode, as we're going to do a little further dive into Escape for Tarkov. So a fellow co-host of mine from the PUBG podcast, Winner, Kev, aka the1Heart, is joining us today. How are you today, sir?
Yo, what's going on, man? I'm great. I'm just excited to talk about another game that we both really love, and just really dive into it.
Nice. Be honest, did you get any scav runs in this morning?
No, dude, I just woke up. I was up too late tending to my hideout and kind of just chilling and watching something we'll talk about a little later regarding Twitch in the game.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Well, welcome. And Eric, how are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Looking forward to talking some Tarkov and getting deeper into this game that everyone is really starting to pick up, and it's going to be big, I think.
I agree. And before we jump in, do us a favor. If you've been here before, you're coming back, and you think we've earned it, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, drop us a comment. We'd love to know what you think about Escape for Tarkov. Do you think it's going to be a big game? We do. We're going to get into that. But there's really not... outside of that, there's not a huge agenda today. We want to talk about Tarkov. We obviously have Kev here. I think we have three very different, unique playstyles when it comes to most games. So I'm excited to jump into it. And as we kind of alluded to, Kev and I, obviously, we run the PUBG podcast. And we've started playing some Tarkov. And about every 3 or 4 months, personally, I tend to take a break from PUBG. And it's not something that I plan on. It's usually a title or a game either gets enough publicity or something happens that I end up trying it. And it usually peels me away for, 2, 3, 4 weeks. And then I sort of like rebound and get back into PUBG. It sort of refreshes me for that. Right now, though, I'm still loving PUBG. I'm not playing it as much offline. I've been playing a lot more Tarkov offline. So it feels kind of like a break, but it feels sort of different to me. So I'm kind of curious what you guys are feeling as it relates to this. And I know, like, Eric, like your main game, I would say, is probably WoW, maybe WoW Classic. And so I'm wondering, like, from you guys, what you think Tarkov is. Do you think is it a different break? Is it just a break? Like, what is it?
I mean, there is something, like, pretty different about this game. I think it's a little more than a break. I've been playing this game like pretty consistently. I still get in for PUBG. You know, if I see some friends on, I'll get on. If there's for some reason a patch for EFT, I'll get on. And if it's Friday night, I'm always gonna get on and try and hang out with the crew. But yeah, I've been really grinding this game, and I think I do take a break a little longer than you, a few times a year. You know, last year was Apex for a while. Or the beginning of this past year, and right. Yeah, I've always kind of taken breaks. I think before that, when I was still on Xbox, I became a little tired of playing TPP so often, so I ended up getting into Blackout pretty hard when that was popular, and granted that did last a little longer on console than it did on PC, where it's kind of like a flash in the pan. But yeah, I find it to be a very different game. Ronald, what are your thoughts on that? Like on the switch from like how much time you're putting in this game?
Yeah, it's really interesting for me because it's not only a break, but it's a different genre completely than what I normally play. And I am really enjoying it. The first couple hours that I played Tarkov, I didn't think it was the greatest thing ever, to be honest with you. Dropping into a game that has no interface, right, for someone who's not an FPS player. Right. Is kind of a challenge because unlike you guys, I'm not someone who has played like thousands of hours of PUBG and then FPS is my normal thing that I go to, right? So the first couple hours were a little challenging, but now I'm actually really enjoying it because I've gotten over that initial hump of learning what the actual game can be. And so the break has some staying power with me, actually. My offline time, I've been actually enjoying playing more Tarkov than anything else, which is definitely a change for me, because I definitely take a break from WoW a couple times a year, but I usually try new RTS games or new games that are in the MMO genre of some kind. But Tarkov is this great mix of like an FPS game and an MMO at the same time, and I really like the fact that the game mechanics itself, the only thing that pushes you is a timer. You don't have an artificial circle like in a battle royale, and Trigger and I have talked about that in the first episode that we did, and I think that is going to allow the game to have crossover to a much larger audience.
Yeah, I agree with that. And as I've gone a little further into it, to sort of add on to that, the thing that I like the most about Tarkov is that there is no punishment outside of self-inflicted punishment for playing with players of any skill level, right? So if someone brand new comes in, I can kit myself out however I want to and risk whatever I want to while teaching them. So I can go in with a bare bones setup, or I can go in fully kitted, right? Or take them loot or whatever. And so like I can choose the punishment level in Tarkov, and it sort of flows throughout the entire game, right? You've got Scav, which is no risk, potentially high reward, other than time is all you're risking. And then you got PMC, where you're risking your stuff. But if I'm going to go do a PMC raid with someone that's new, there's no negative. I can choose what I want to risk. I can go in with just a pistol if I want to and show someone around. So I love that aspect to it. And it kind of goes into what you said. It's kind of not, there's really not a genre for it, because it's MMO. It's got some like RTS inventory, or like AARPG inventory management. It's got the FPS. So yeah, I think that's kind of the exact reason why I like it as well.
Yeah, so I mean, coming from console, I never played a game like this that was like focused on looting amidst like other live players, and something like that never got its hooks in me. I'd always heard there was DayZ that was actually available in its like bare bones kind of state on console, but it was super buggy, and people pretty much just told me to stay away. And then there was another game that came out called Vigor, and that was what people told me was like this game Escape from Tarkov, but like a more bare bones version that would work on console. The only problem was it was solo only at the start, but there was teaming rampant. You couldn't matchmake, but you could easily get in, and so there'd be like 3-man teams rolling up on you, and the shooting wasn't as dialed in as PUBG or as I found Escape from Tarkov to be. So I quickly just kind of dropped it, because it's like, how are you going to defend yourself when you're just getting bullet spammed and like you don't have cover mechanics or a really solid first-person shooter aspect to it? And it was TPP as well.
Gotcha.
Which I've never been like a huge fan of. It just feels a little too out of body for me. But at that point, I gave it up and I went back to PUBG. But I thought always like lingered in my mind, like, what is this Escape from Tarkov game? So when I switched to PC, I was just all PUBG all the time, pretty much. I mean, there was some Apex and stuff, but as I got more comfortable, some of that anxiety that you feel in the game started to slip away, like that tension, because I kind of knew the circle settings. I knew what was going to happen to a degree and where I needed to go. There was always the chance on the drop of what could happen, but that was the chaos you chose. And then after that, it was kind of like, all right, I know I need to move here. I know there's probably going to be threats this way, and like there's still always something new happening. But I was ready to deal with the objective, and it wasn't scary anymore. And so I finally checked out Tarkov, and, I was just looking for a game where the death kind of seemed to have a little more weight. And I have a pretty good first impression of that game. I jumped into Scav on Factory, not knowing any of the maps, and it was the middle of the night. Just the middle of the night, and there's so much ambient noise in that game, but it's pitch black. I mean, there was where I spawned in, there was no light, and I moved like a foot, and I made what sounded like the most noise I'd ever made. I felt like a bull in a china closet.
Did you have a headset on, like on your first scav run? Did you have a headset which amplifies everything?
Like the character come in with a headset? I don't even know. I don't remember. I mean, this was like in the summer. but I made a ton of noise. I think I was up on some scaffolding or something, so it's just that hollow metal, tinny sound.
Right.
And I couldn't see anything. Like, it wasn't even a spot that had like some flickering incandescent lights, somewhere. It was just pitch black. So I was like, screw this, I'm staying still. And I just stood there and I heard someone barreling towards me at a certain point. And so I kind of pinpointed the location and just fired. And at that point I realized, ooh, muzzle flash. And I used the muzzle flash to get my first kill ever. And then about 2 seconds later, someone just ran to that location. And they probably had NVGs on. And
Right.
They mowed me down. But I was so proud of myself for even getting a kill in the dark. I was like, what the hell kind of game is this? Do people play like this? And then I found out later there are night vision goggles. And, you don't normally play factory at night unless you're a crazy geared PMC and all this other
Right.
stuff. But I did a few more scav runs like that. But I didn't know the game. I didn't know anyone who played regularly. And I just put it down. And I didn't pick it back up until point 12. And I jumped in with people from the hot drop community so they could like properly show me around and explain like how to get out of the game and all these other things. And yeah, this game is different because of like the sum of the gameplay loop and all the things they tied together. Exploration.
Now, at that point,
Yeah.
were you playing a lot of PUBG in your original drop into Tarkov?
Yeah, I was playing that like every single day at that point.
Because one of the things that I think people notice when you compare Tarkov to PUBG, at least I noticed, is the sound. And I mean, I don't want to gloss over this point on the gameplay mechanics because the sound is so different. And when you play PUBG, right, you're programmed to listen for sound and footsteps in a building or whatever, but it's so much quieter. And so your like threshold in your mind for what's acceptable and what's not acceptable for sound is so different in Tarkov. It was like when we were doing a scav run just the other day, Trigger, and we're like, okay, we're going to run, and we're not going to really worry about it because the amount of sound we make is kind of roughly the same. So we just didn't worry about it that much. And we were doing interchange. We got through interchange so much quicker, right? But it really didn't make any difference. But the amount of sound we were making, like if we were making that much sound in PUBG, you'd hear somebody clear across Miramar, right? So it was kind of crazy.
Well, and I think sound is probably the biggest barrier for most PUBG people coming into Tarkov. Because when I watched streams of Tarkov, I was terrified, right? Because I'm like, they hit a bush, like they made all the noise, and then you hear everything, right? And when you first get in the game, and then there's headsets that amplify different types of volume, and I think the tendency is you don't want to move, just like Kev, you experienced. You're like, I just stepped on glass, and I think they heard it across the map, and they might have. But it's interesting as you move further into the game, especially someone who hasn't played before. The sounds in Tarkov, in my opinion at least, I'm going to call them, they're more comforting because they're so dynamic and there's so many different types of sounds that you start to recognize them. And my progression as I've moved into the 20s and as far as level goes is that, I used to creep around all the time. But then I learned that, if I have a headset on, I can hear someone creeping and they're just going to clap me when I come around the corner. But now I'm sort of comforted by the sound because I can sort of run or like walk at full speed or whatever it is. And you can kind of recognize the noises and the different platforms. It's, oh, that guy's walking on planks, and I know where that room is now. So all of those different sounds are so amplified, and they're terrifying in the beginning. But as you move forward in the game, it's almost like, oh, I know what that is. So it's interesting. It's definitely different. Definitely different.
Yeah, I've almost come to use sound as like an unequipped weapon. And so you can draw people in, you can create scenarios that benefit you using the sound in the game. Like, for example, if there's a group of scavs, you can shoot at one of them and aggro them, and then as they're looking for you, walk on some wood, just walk on some wood backwards, make them come around a corner, and you kill them all. Those kinds of scenarios happen in the game. You can also do it with other players. Use sound coming up an escalator on purpose, knowing that there was a player stalking me, but he didn't realize I was stalking him at the same time. And so I think sound is actually super unique in this game because of how loud it is, and it makes gameplay that's just super fun. And, I don't know how they'd integrate that into other games, but Tarkov really seems to be hitting on something that's good.
Yeah, so the sound is something that's like, it's just insane because, like you said, you could have, a headset on in game. The player itself is wearing a special headset, and there's like 3 or 4 different kinds, and they all have different profiles. Some of them, you go through a bush, like you said, and it sounds like you lit off fireworks, and it kind of hurts your ears. It's abrasive, but you will hear someone coming sooner than if you weren't wearing them. So there's kind of an argument sometimes for that, but then there's also just normal hearing, which you'll get most used to if you play scav runs a lot. And then even past that, there is the deafening silence of wearing a full-blown headset with a visor and everything that covers your ear. And the reason you'd wear that is for the ear protection and the overall, like, you can withstand a few more shots, maybe, which, we can get into that when we talk about the ballistics and stuff. But it's funny if you spawn in as a scav and you're wearing one of these goofy motorcycle helmets or a firefighter's helmet that covers your ears. I've always been told and tell people to just drop it because it's like a class 1 or 2 helmet, which means it won't even stop a pistol in most situations. And at the same time, you cannot hear. So what's the point of wearing it? Just drop it where you start and move on. So yeah, the sound is super dynamic. I'm not going to give it props and say it's better than PUBG in any way, because there are still points where you're like, there's a guy in my building and I have no idea where he is. And so if that guy decides to just get quiet like you would in PUBG too, you have an even harder time in a certain way, because you have to like seriously clear every floor, every room, and you still might not be sure. And so you just get killed by that cheeky breaky.
Yeah, and you brought up probably the main thing that I wish both games would learn from each other, and one of them is like locating the directional sound in Tarkov is sometimes maddening, but the thing that I wish PUBG would learn from Tarkov is the rustling noises when you're moving, right? Because right now, if you're sitting still and not ADS in PUBG, like you can turn and look in any direction and make no noise. And it's maddening when someone can literally cover an entire, floor of a building, and they can look in any direction they want without, notifying you. Whereas in Tarkov, if you're sitting in a corner and someone comes at you from 90 degrees and you have to turn to look at them, you're going to make a noise. And so that part's kind of cool. But that's why I say I think they should learn from each other. I don't think one is superior than the other because, and maybe it's just amount of time in PUBG that gives me the ability to locate people, but I have the ability to know, like, oh, they're a floor above me. Oh, that's probably 30 meters away. Like, the sound is just different. It's not as dynamic, but it's much more precise, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and one thing for PUBG players kind of making their way over to this, how many people who play PUBG regularly complain about wind on Vikendi? Could they ever possibly manage this game? I mean, think about a game where it is, first of all, you can't see very far, and it's just pouring rain the entire time.
Right.
To the point where, like, if you step inside, all of a sudden it's like you can hear again. You're like, oh my god, it's like that quick dynamic shift from inside to outside. But how loud is it? You get out of some of those games sometimes, and your ears are just kind of like ringing with all the rain or all of that. But there's also that comforting part of loading in and just hearing like the crickets and the the birds and all that stuff too.
Right.
You're like, we're getting into Shoreline or whatever.
Yeah, the sound is it's interesting because in PUBG it's a lot quieter from my perspective. I mean, you guys have a lot more time, but I'll give it to you from my perspective. The sound is so much quieter in PUBG that there's been a few times doing scav runs where I've thought, oh, I hear gunshots. That's close, and it's not close.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because
different, yeah.
Because in PUBG you hear gunshots, it's kind of the same volume, and you kind of get a feel for that. But in Tarkov, when it's close, you know it's close, and so I think that's definitely a difference for a PUBG player coming over. But again, the amount of floor sound, whether it's glass or wood or metal or things like that, is so much more dynamic that I think it like I said before, sound is almost like an unequipped weapon, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's that's a really good way to look at it, because you even mentioned something that I haven't tried yet really in Tarkov, and I did it very unsuccessfully last night in PUBG, trying to bait people to my team, and it was awful. But I haven't really got to the point where I've tried to like set a trap or intentionally make noise to bring another player in. And when you're saying escalator, I'm thinking you were on interchange and you're baiting someone up or down. And that, I mean, running on metal surfaces is like ringing the loudest siren in the game on that map. So I'm sure that was really effective at bringing someone to your location.
Yeah, I mean, I was in interchange, and I actually did a run where I found myself in the parking garage underneath.
Yep.
And so I thought, I've never really looted down here, so I wanted to check it out. And there's actually some good loot down there. And so I came through, and I was coming up the back escalator by Ollie. I was going to go out through Ollie. And I heard some shooting going on, so I figured people were farming scavs in Ollie. And sure enough, there's obviously a team of 2 people working up there. And I creeped up, and I just popped my head up, and I saw, and they couldn't see me because, like we've said before, Trigger, who comes up that escalator, right? And so they weren't expecting to see somebody coming up that way. And so one of the things that was really interesting about it is I needed one of them to move, because if I would have shot the first guy who had a clear shot on, the second guy would have shot me. So I ran up and down that escalator twice and got their attention, and then backed away, and they both came around the corner, and I shot both of them.
Yes. That's
and so
awesome.
Nice.
And so one of those things is like, from my perspective, the strategy of this game in general, I just absolutely love that part of it. So sound is the thing.
Yeah, I do love how you can be, as quiet as a mouse, or make a ton of noise to get a lot of attention, and then kind of just try and slip away and see what happens. Maybe that Scav boss is around, so you're gonna make a bunch of noise, aggro them, and then leave, so that you draw a couple shots in, a way out of that situation, and then someone else is gonna come through, and you're gonna slink up to maybe the observatory on reserve, and then shoot down at them and try and clean up the whole thing from afar.
Right.
You have all these options, but Trigger, to your point, God, I wish they would make it so that if you turn more than 75 or 90 degrees while you're crouched or anything in PUBG, that you've made some noise like you do in this game. I think that'd be nice. Of course, there's ways to minimize that in Tarkov, but there's still going to be something if that guy moves even a little.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's just like a risk reward of camping, right? I don't want to say that camping isn't a playstyle that should be allowed. Right now, it just seems really overpowered in PUBG that you can make no noise and cover all the angles. Because in Tarkov, look, you camp a corner and you're kind of picking an angle, and then you're saying, okay, if someone's coming from the other side, I'm going to have to make noise and risk being heard to look that direction. So it makes you think a little bit more. And it also gives the person that's moving and not camping the ability to have a little bit more of an equal playing field. Whereas in PUBG, if you're sitting in a corner, it's almost too powerful, which is why I think the community gets frustrated about it. But again, I don't want to tell someone how to play the game. I just think that's an area that could be brought closer together. And I think Tarkov does it extremely well.
Exactly. And just one last thing on the sound.
Yeah.
But, Ronald's talking about running straight up the escalator or down it to make noise and bait somebody. And there's the risk there that they're probably going to hear you. But if you can catch them off guard, or you can then turn down somewhere else and have them kind of lose you, there's some strength in that. But there's also times where a full 5 stack will like slow creep up the whole thing. And you make no noise, but you're so exposed.
Yep.
But if you get up there, they have no idea. So, I mean, it's super interesting that way.
Yeah, I think sound is obviously fascinating, and I definitely want to come back to some gameplay elements, especially how we all play the game. But what I really want to talk about is something that just happened in the last few days, actually. before we jump back into gameplay, because I think it's just really cool, and I was actually really excited to talk to you guys about it because it just happened. So, Battle State did something really neat. They partnered up with some of the bigger streamers. At least they're the ones that I'm aware of. I don't know actually the number that they did here. And I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but they partnered up with some of the big Twitch streamers, and they basically made it so that if your Battle State account was linked with your Twitch account as a viewer, and you were watching these creators play, you have a chance to get an in-game drop from watching them in-game. And personally, I thought this was extremely cool because it's like a win-win-win-win. Right? It's like the streamers are being, rewarded by having people come to their stream and check them out, giving them a chance to be viewed, and then it's rewarding viewers by maybe finding a new streamer because you're incentivized to go watch. You're probably getting people interested in the game, so Battle State wins, and then we win because we get to talk about it.
And that last part's the most important.
Exactly.
Did you guys get a chance to get a drop yet from this?
No. I just learned about it last night, and I was going to do it today after we were recording. So that's why I'm curious if you guys saw it or if you did it or.
So we're on video, so I might be getting caught a little more than when we do our show. But as soon as you started talking about drops, I went, oh shit, I should go refresh my page on one of these so I can get another drop while we're recording.
We should talk about like how do you link your account?
Yeah.
It's like someone's going to hear this and be like, how do I do this? Does anybody know how to do that?
Yeah, so all you got to do is go to, it's actually it's way easier than some of the things I've tried before. I remember trying to link my YouTube account with my PUBG account for PGC, and I just didn't get it going, and I was like, this is taking too long, and the game's already on, I'm going, and I'm just going to watch. This was really easy. You just go to the website. A lot of times you'll already be still signed in from the last time when you set up your account or upgraded to the EOD, like a couple of us have done. So I just went in there, and then it was just like, I clicked on the button to link to Twitch, and since I was signed in on that already, it just brought up my face and was like, you're the one-Heart, right? And it's like, yep. And I just clicked yes, and that was it. From there,
nice.
You literally just watch a stream. From what I've heard, it doesn't matter whether you have 1 or 7. Like you don't multiply your chances to get something.
Okay.
And you're not going to get something better for watching the number 1 stream over, the smallest of the smallest stream of the people who are sponsored. Just make sure that they are one of the sponsored streamers. But yeah, the drops have been pretty cool.
Do you know how to find out how they're a sponsored streamer?
I mean, they should have drop on their title, and they'll probably have a decent amount of people watching if that's the case. I mean, I don't have a way of saying, there could be someone who just puts drop on their title and just lying to you, but I really doubt that with this community.
Okay.
I've always loved how welcoming and kind everyone in PUBG was, and it seems it's the same way. I think in any game this punishing, people are pretty nice and open and honest, and I think that applies to the streamers as well. We can name a few of the people that we know of.
Yeah, please. If you know of them, do it.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll start from, Pestily is someone who I think you really need to know if you're getting into this game, as well as Veritas. They make amazing guides. Another was Tweak, who is an Irish guy who makes also like really good loot guides, and all of them have insane gameplay, and they're really open and honest about how to improve. They'll do 0 to hero, they'll do hardcore mode where, they can't use the flea market or, use anything other than an alpha container and stuff. So they'll show you how to play from a standard account. They're very helpful. So I always recommend just going to them first. But then there's also Sequisha, who is one of the funniest people playing this game. He
also has the best mustache on Twitch, I think.
Yeah, the best mustache on Twitch for sure. Pretty sure he even has a mustache in this game because of it.
I think you're right.
Yeah. And so he's another one. And then the one who I watch the most is Grims. I watch him almost every single day. I just love his style of playing. He shows me what I could maybe do if I had the balls to go in solo more. But There's a bigger list. I'm sure we can make a bigger list, but those are the people that I've been paying attention to, and so far I've gotten a few drops. I've heard some people getting eye cases. Some people are getting fully decked Zenith AK 74s. And so far I've gotten an antique book, which I find pretty often anyway, but it's still worth like 50K.
Yeah.
And I got 8 or 7 green gunpowders.
Nice.
That was one of mine, which is like kind of, whatever, but I sold them all and I made like 200K. So far they've made me like 250K richer. And I'm hoping for more.
Cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll be sure to get that list of streamers in the show notes so everyone can find and check out some new streamers, because I'm sure there's people out there like me that haven't checked out all those people. So I'm pretty excited to watch their streams and see what they're doing. And one thing you said, Kev, that I think is super important too is the community for Tarkov is super nice. They're most of the people you run into are just really excited to play the game. And not to say that FPS players aren't all like that, but there definitely seems to be a larger concentration in Tarkov than what I've run into, I guess, in the past. So I think that's been very fun, and actually one of the things that I think is going to make Tarkov successful in the long run. Every game has this challenge, right, of transitioning in new players. And there is a point at which you're not a new player anymore. And if you want the game to last and not be the last player playing the game you love, you have to, at least on some level, want to help someone else get better at it. So I think Tarkov has got a really healthy and stable entry like zone and flow, and I think that's super important.
Yeah, which is funny because it's probably the most unforgiving game to a new player, especially considering you can run into like a level 51 geared player as a level 1, But, you mentioned how nice people are, and if you're someone who doesn't know, where to find a group that'll help you, I mean, there's the main EFT Discord, but I forgot to mention someone else on Twitch who's really helpful for the community and works really well with Tarkov, and that is in Battle State. That's Clean with a K. He's another guy. He plays with Shroud and a bunch of other players and content creators all the time, and he has what's called the Sherpa program, and I think it's actually part of Battle State, but he has an offshoot of it on his Discord. The Sherpa program is people who are so well versed in this game, they've probably been playing since the beginning, and they're basically guaranteed to not kill you while showing you around, and also not be like, they're not going to get impatient with you, because if you've ever been looking for a group, you might have gotten an invite from someone you don't know while you're waiting for the invite from someone you do, and don't accept that. That's going to be someone who's trying to pull a fast one on you, and you'll load in with them, and they're just going to shoot you and take your loot.
All right, they're going to give you the once-over, like, what gun do you have, what backpack do you have, and if they need it or want it, you're dead.
Yeah. So, that's as untrustworthy as the scab wiggle. You never know. Which, for those who don't know, you do the little lean, and the scab will do the lean back, and they might let you go, but you might turn your back and they'll just shoot you.
Right.
So that's something else you have a hard time trusting people with. But these Sherpas have an in-game icon, similar to how EOD players have the crown. They'll have this little green icon and green name, which indicates that they're a little friendlier out there. So that's something for those of you who might not know a group to play with, but need someone to show you around, which you need.
Well, and you sort of brought up a few things that I don't just want to gloss over, because one of the things I really wanted to talk about was things that, like, what do you wish you knew when you started? And you hit a couple that are that I think are really worth highlighting. That, one, don't just randomly group with somebody. If you're gonna group up, go find a Discord, message one of us, do something to find someone who can show you around. Because again, back to my previous point, this game doesn't really punish people for showing people the ropes. They choose what to risk. So you don't need to have like feelings about the gear they might lose. The person showing you around is going to make that conscious decision of what to take in. And furthermore, this Sherpa program is really, really neat. and it's sort of, Battle State recognizing like this game's hard to get into, it's hardcore, but hey, we have a group of people that that can do it. So I actually don't know how you become a Sherpa. I would assume it's something like we're PUBG partners. I'm sure this is similar to a partner program, but there's probably some pretty good requirements around it. I don't know.
I wish I knew. I'll make a couple assumptions here. I don't know if this is something that's run strictly by Battle State. I don't know if this is something maybe by the Wikipedia guys who, again, if you're talking about resources, you can't forget about all the work that the wiki guys do. They have their own Discord. They're really helpful. I've gone in with questions like, what does this key do? Is it worth it? Those guys are very helpful. So I don't know if they're setting it up. I'm sure there has to be a certain amount of time, maybe like a couple patches deep or something, and then just a good relationship with some of the other content creators and the game makers, right?
Yeah.
But it seems like it's a way to basically ensure that you won't get team killed, outside of miscommunication team kills, which happen pretty often. But yeah, and then there's unofficial Sherpas, which are just going to be friends of friends and stuff who are like, I got some time, I'll show you around. Which can be hard, I definitely know the feeling of being like, oh man, do I really gotta I just spent so much time learning this map, and now I want to go run it. But let's go take this guy on a expedition here, and we'll do a safari tour of this is the reserve. We're not gonna go in there because we're not geared enough,
Right. So it looks like I just quickly Googled this and found that there's an application. So you basically send your profile in, and there's a Sherpa request, basically. But then there's also a section on the main escapefromtarkov.com/Sherpa that's called Sherpa Raid Request. And it literally has ratings and people that are Sherpas that you can request them. Right? So you can find someone in your time zone. Yeah. You can find someone in your time zone and request that they, start you through the game or help you out. This is really cool. It's really cool. I sort of had one of the unofficial Sherpas. Shout out to Dadcaster. He's kind of the guy that was like, hey, come with me, right? And I had gear fear. I had sound fear. I had basically all the things I was scared of in this game, and he was just sort of threw me in his backpack and forced me through a couple of the maps. And I do think that is really, really important for this game. It's a hard one to just jump into by yourself, but I think pretty quickly, once you get the hang of it, you like to do things by yourself and farm up to get ready for doing group stuff. So it's a really... Yeah, for me, that's the biggest thing I wish I knew was how to get into the game. I got lucky and had people show it to me. So I don't know if there's other things that you guys wanted to talk about things you wish you knew.
Well, think about how in other games, like in MMOs, you have guilds or clans or things like that. And this kind of thing that happens kind of naturally through community that gets built, right?
Yeah.
But if you think about this, in a good FPS, the community is outside of the game. There's no community in the game itself. The game mechanics outside of a friends list to play with don't promote any kind of community. And so one of the things that I think is super interesting is that they recognize the fact that the game is complicated, and they built this in from the beginning. And I think about I don't know if PUBG has anything like this. That's a question for both of you because I've never run into it. But if PUBG had a program that just paired you with someone who was willing to show you gunplay, the game would be so much more approachable. And Tarkov is brilliant for doing this. And I also think that they made one other critical choice that's awesome. And we've said this, but we can't gloss over the point that an experienced player chooses what they lose or what they don't lose from helping an inexperienced player. And when you run into that scenario where you have a game that you both love, you want to share with your friend, right? Because you want to play with your friend. But it's okay, here's the game, figure it out and play with me in 2 months. No one's going to do that anymore. No one has the patience for that. Gamers have changed. And so this is awesome that Tarkov recognizes this. And I think they're actually going to create an entirely new genre myself personally. And so, yeah, circling back to the whole thing about what we wish we knew, I got 2 quick points on that I want to throw out to both of you to see what you think. The first one's pretty easy and simple. It's kind of understand what not to ensure and what to ensure. in the early stages of the game. So like, before level 5, do you really need to ensure anything? Or what do you need to do? And the second point is, Trigger, you made a video on basically like inventory management and you're, playing loot Tetris and those kinds of things.
Yep.
And you made a great point, which I think most people don't know, obviously, is you can basically sell everything before level 5. Nothing of really what you get really matters. And just get rid of it. Do some bag and bag stuff, which we'll put a link to your video that you made in the description, because I think everyone should go watch that, because inventory management is such a huge part of this game. And so I think basically you can sell everything before level 5 and don't really worry about ensuring too many things before level 5. And that's when you're really starting, and you have this fear of like loot fear, right? You guys touched on that, and that's totally a real thing. So I'd like to hear what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I would say 100%. Like, you are going to die. You are going to lose stuff. And the only way to learn if you like stuff is to go out and use it against other players or scavs or whatever. So, like, gear fear is real, but you gotta press into it. Like, don't just hoard guns in the lower part of your inventory for that perfect time to use it. Because the perfect time to use it is the time that you should have had that gun and you run into somebody and you knew you should have had it. So gear fear is real. I'm not trying to dismiss it, but just know that you're going to lose stuff, but that you can always go run scav runs and get it back, which is really, really cool. But you said something that I think is so critical. I think Escape for Tarkov is defining a genre. The funny part is I'm not sure that another game will attempt to enter the genre outside of ones that already exist, right? Because the only other game that's close in my mind is EVE Online, and it's in a totally different realm, but it's the same kind of thing. With the inventory management, the kind of hardcore nature of it, it's a little more developed because it's been around longer. But Tarkov's been in development for years now, and they obviously just came on to the new upgrade on their engine. But this is a new genre, man, and I agree. I think it's got some staying power.
Yeah, and the funny thing is I mean, it's been in development for years, and it still will be in development for like years. We're still only at 0.12.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, this game is going to keep evolving and it's going to keep changing. And the one thing that they always have said is it will always remain like hardcore. And so you have to get used to that. And that's why they put in things to ease the pain, like the Sherpa program. And, even things like if you guys might not know this, but if you completely run out of money, Proper gives you an AK.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you hit bottom of the barrel and you're just at your lowest point ever, Proper's like, here, you poor little baby. Take this
awesome.
AK and get back there. And to your point, you can always just scav run too. So that's how I made a lot of money and kind of learned how to navigate the map like in a sneakier way by doing scav runs and learning like a loot run.
Will you talk about that though? Like, talk about taking it slow, because I think that the natural thing for people is going to be to jump into Tarkov and play it however they play other games and think they have to play a certain way. And I think what you just said is critical.
Yeah, and I was kind of reminded of this because just yesterday I was on Twitter and I saw Sequisha post something. He's like, a lot of you guys are paying attention to this game for the first time. You might be coming from, more running gun titles, or you see the top streamers who really have that understanding of what the sounds are, what their equipment is, and what the pacing of the game, the particular like raid instance is. Mm-hmm. So they know when they can push. They know what's going on, and they know they have all of the training necessary to pull that off. But as a new player, just take your time. You hear something, just take it slow. If you're running and you hear, pay attention to the noise. He mentioned something about pay attention to the noises you make. Because, as you pass through different terrain, different buildings, because you'll take that and learn from it. So the next time you hear someone clanging on metal, even though they were just making that sound, you go, oh, they're over that pile of trash.
Right.
Now I can peek around the corner and just blast them. And he also just mentions, something that you have to do in this game, which is, you're moving along and you should be walking more than you run a lot of times, but also just stop and listen before you enter a building or something. Just see if you can pick up that little sound cue that you wouldn't get if you're blasting through bushes and just charging at this spot, you know. And, you know, the last thing he said, which is something I still haven't learned, is once you have that high gear loot item that you have to get out with, move slow still, because you run fast, you get killed fast. And that happened to me twice yesterday. It was really frustrating. I had quest items that I needed to like leave with, and I was like, I gotta go. And because I rushed it and didn't take my time, I could have taken 20 minutes to get out, maybe gotten out. But instead I was like, I'm gonna get out in the next 3 minutes.
Right.
And I got killed both times. So
I have a question for you, Kev. Is the transition from the run and gun to the more strategic and slow? Talk about that from like an FPS perspective, because that's something that I think is super interesting about this game and is going to attract an entirely different audience. So like, was that transition hard for you? Did you find like give a player who's used to run and gun tips for how to become a little bit more of a strategic player? Like what was that transition like for you?
I think it was definitely a bit of a, you know, a harder transition. You know, you learn it if you come from somewhere like Call of Duty or something like that. You're gonna have a really difficult time with this. But if you played enough BR, you'll understand the patience of, well, I have the circle. Think of it like that a lot of the time. Just think you always have the circle, because there's nothing actually forcing you to move. Just like when you have the circle and you know someone's coming over the bridge or they're coming into the, you know, zone and you're waiting for them. You're like, I'm just gonna wait. I know that I can move. I can go look for that other fight, but I know I have an easy point here, or I have center circle, or whatever it is. You're like, I think I'm gonna just chill here and wait. Which people, you know, they say, oh, you're camping, but it's like, no, I'm holding and defending a position. Sometimes that's all you need to do in Tarkov. Just hold and defend a position. Wait to hear what else is happening. Let someone else make the move so that you can come in and do your classic third party. You know, you don't have to rush in this game. Getting into that mindset definitely just takes time and a lot of punishment probably. But it's worth it for sure.
So here's the follow-up question then. What is it like for you right now to go back to playing PUBG after playing Tons of Tarkov?
I'm very relaxed. I
totally agree. Totally agree.
I talked about it a little bit right in the beginning when we, you know, talking about what's different, and it was just how at PUBG I kind of lost that anxiety because we've been doing a podcast on this thing for a while. I'm supposed to be an expert. I'm not that great at the game still, but I know what's going to happen and everything that's happening around me. And I feel like I can hold my own in those situations. I don't feel that still in Tarkov. I get more comfortable every day, but I don't think there'll ever be a point where I lose that completely. You know, that anxiety, the good kind of anxiety, just that emotional tug, that immersion where you really feel the shots coming in and stuff. In PUBG, it's more arcadey now than I ever thought it would be. And now I don't think I'll ever play COD again. A game like that, you know?
It's funny, man. It really is not only is it defining its own genre, but it's helping other games define their genre, right? And like, it's funny. I go back to PUBG and I experience the same thing. I'm like, arcade is like the word, like what I would use for it, because it's like a realism military arcade, but it's like, it's relaxing because there's less like ambience and like noise depth to pay attention to, but it's also cleaner in a way. And I don't know exactly how to describe the difference, but the sound is cleaner in PUBG because it's not as deep. And so like the directional audio, which is something that if you go listen to the Winter podcast, you'll hear me complain about it. But now I go back and I'm like, oh, that's nice. I know exactly what direction that shot came from. I know exactly how far away it is. I know if I can push it. I know if I shouldn't. And then it's just different. And so, yeah, like relaxed is the exact feeling I have as well. It's fun.
Yeah. Trigger, do you remember? I'm sorry. Trigger, you remember when you have to used to like spin your character around to like pinpoint something in PUBG, but then they kind of dial that in after a while? EFT has that still.
Oh,
so
100%.
Remember that too. If you hear a shot and you're not sure where it is, do a little spin move.
It's a great
and
point.
that'll help. But yeah, it's all a matter of perspective, right? It's what games are you playing compared to the game you're playing now, and that makes the game seem more hardcore. Like PUBG was compared to Apex or something else, more rooted in realism, so that was the hardcore game.
Right.
Yep. So one of the interesting things about Tarkov that I think is different than PUBG is when you spawn into PUBG, right? You jump out of the airplane, you can look around and see 50 people around you.
Yeah.
So you can tell, hey, I'm dropping in hot into Sandhook, into Paradise, and I'm gonna contest Trigger for his little balcony that he goes to every single time, and of course we'll lose. But the point being that when you go into Tarkov, you know there's other players, but you can't see anybody. So does that change your focus? Like, how was that transition for both of you? Because I'm not a huge FPS player, so for me, I actually found the Tarkov experience to be almost less stressful. And I'm really curious what you guys think about that.
So I actually find that to be more stressful than PUBG, because what I know about FPS games and having played them on PC for a long time, and Kev brought up COD, which is where this reference comes from, but there are people that are so good at map knowledge and spawn locations, and COD is probably the most brutal game because they know exactly where they need to stand to keep you in a spawn so they can keep farming you. And that is something that exists in Tarkov to an extent that, like, there are certain spawns that are close to each other. So, like, if you spawn in and you're like, oh, where am I? And you're trying to, like, you know, your second monitor, you've got a map up. Pro tip, by the way, have a map up on your second monitor, your phone. Like, print it out if you don't have a second monitor, but have a map because you will get lost.
Yeah, use those wiki maps. I'm sorry, but use the wiki maps that show all the names of the locations. It shows all the spawns,
right,
and that'll help you know, like, the certain maps. We can get into those, but wiki,
right,
for sure.
But they've been around. There's people that have been playing for a long time. You don't know who's going to be in the game with you, but people know the spawns. So there's players that are really smart and know the spawns, and they're going to come check them, right? Because if you're slow to move out or don't know exactly where to go, you can get picked on, quote unquote, because there's people that know the maps really well. But to your point, every player, and this is a neat thing, right? Every player loads into the map at the same time. So it doesn't matter if you know how, like in PUBG, if you don't know how to parachute well, you can lose valuable seconds of finding loot, right? Or, you know, someone gets the building you're going to go and you don't have time to peel off. Everybody loads in, right? You get the deploy in Tarkov, 20-second countdown, and you're in, and everybody starts right then. So what it does is it gives everybody an equal playing field, but similar to games like Counter-Strike and COD and all the other, you know, structured team-based shooters, it creates natural choke points, which is why it's the opposite for me. Because as I've gotten further into the game, I know that if I get a certain spawn, I can't go where I want to go, or if I do go, I have to be very careful because it's a natural choke point for another spawn that could rush there. So it's a different set of, I don't know, fear, anxiety, whatever you want to call it, related to, you know, not having seeing other people dropping in around me. And I think that's a comfort thing too, kind of to your point, is if I'm dropping into Paradise, like you mentioned, and I see 17 parachutes coming in, I'm like, let's go. It's time to just destroy people. Like, we're going to win. And so I don't have any fear around that, and I'm still getting over it in Tarkov. So, yeah, that's a really good point you made, but I'm the opposite of you right now, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the things I really like about this whole game experience for Tarkov is that you and I play it very differently, and we both enjoy it very much. And so I think that's just pretty cool. And
we can play together.
Yes.
Right?
That is super critical.
That's what I really like about it, is that your play style doesn't necessarily hinder mine and mine doesn't hinder yours, and it actually forces us to communicate and figure out how to work together. And it works really well when you pair someone up who's extremely strategic like you are, and then someone like me that wants to shoot things. It tends to work really well.
Yeah, and to add to that, you know, the thing with PUBG is that you always have counter of how many people are left, right?
Right.
So you know how many more obstacles stand in your way aside from the RNG of the loot and the RNG of the circles. It's like, okay, but how many more threats do I have to take care of? In Tarkov, you know, each map is maybe 9 to 12 players, and that's not a set number either. But there is going to be a point where, you know, say you're the one having a crazy game. You know, I watched Grimm's. I'm not at the point where I'm having these crazy games where I'm clearing the map, but I watched Grimm's go to interchange, and he was looking for Killa, and instead he found the entire server, and he killed 9 PMCs and was like, I think I got them all. I mean, he was running around just destroying everything. Granted, he had just found a red key card, sold it for 18 million, and was like, I'm running M4s. He's like, I'm running M4s all night with the best ammo. I don't care.
Right.
And so he had the gun to do it and the ammo to finish it. And thank God he did, because he had gone in lighter, I think, before that. Not light, but lighter. He knows he's going to spray a lot of bullets, so he brings them in.
Yeah.
He probably spent like 200K on just ammo that game.
Oh, yeah. The
You know?
ammo's worth more than the whole setup.
Oh, my goodness. But anyway, so he kind of knows, like, okay, I think I killed all the actual players. I just have to worry about, you know, player scavs and stuff at this point, which shouldn't be too much of a problem. But to your point with the spawns, you know, there are set spawns, and there's places like the UN roadblock on Woods where you could spawn in and have the other team literally just like 50 yards down from you, and you're supposed to spawn at the same time, but like always check the timer when you load in, because, you know, a lot of the maps went from 50 to 55 minutes, but if you spawn in at, you know, 54:30, that means there's 30 seconds of someone who could be charging towards that spawn to check it, like you had said. And then there's also people who just stay in spawn for a few minutes and wait to see if you rotate past. And there's a spot on customs headed towards dorms where people will frequently start moving towards dorms, because a lot of quests are in dorms, and there will be a team who just hasn't left that spawn, and they're just waiting for you to cross them, because there's a wide open spot where you'll be seen, and they'll just stay low, and then they'll pop up on you. And so there are things of people manipulate the spawns a little bit, knowing what is going to happen. And then there's also that slightly late spawning, and those seconds matter, just like PUBG, and that could be really detrimental. So that's something that they need to fix, to be honest.
Well, and you kind of lead me to the final thing I want to talk about, and you're talking about like the people that have these spots figured out, right? And being relatively new to the game, I'm learning spots and I'm learning places not to go. But I kind of wanted to ask you guys, kind of as our final sort of like fun topic, like, do you guys have your most memorable death or deaths so far?
I think it just comes down to the confusing moments between teams when you're trying to figure out team rhythm. And one of my most memorable ones are just getting team killed, I think. I mean, there are times when I've, you know, gone into a fight and had the guy lined up and been on single fire, and you're just like, oh God, I just threw away a 300,000 ruble kit because I'm an idiot and forgot to switch. But my most memorable ones is like Trigger just going off on the resort and shoreline. Kills like 2. We think there's a 3rd, and he runs up into the area to heal. But we're also like, there's one more. And so he doesn't tell me exactly where he is. And I go to clear a little bit, and I see someone just in a corner chilling. I'm thinking, that's the last guy. And I just mow Trigger down.
So yeah. I told Eric, I was like, I'm going to bait Kev a little bit on this one to see what he says. But
I knew I was coming back to this one. And then just the other day, you know, Wrestle Eagle, we're playing, and we had just lost Adcaster, and we're clearing an area. I had just taken a scav. He had just taken out like 2 players in a scav or 2. And then there were more scavs all over because we were on reserve by the helicopter, and there's just always scavs. And I healed my limb and body and went to kind of check, and he was still healing his, you know, limbs and everything else. And so I went to go like check the hallway and come back, and he's like, there's people around. I was like, yeah, I'm checking, but I didn't say exactly what I was doing. And as I come back to the spot, he just mowed me down. I'm like, oh, that was me. And then like he killed me, but then he's like, oh dude, I'm so sorry. And then he's just like, oh wait. and he killed like 3 more scavs that all rushed at the same time. So like both of us didn't really do anything too wrong. We both knew there was threats in the area, but because I pushed out without telling him I'm pushing out towards helicopter to clear threats or whatever, since I wasn't like painfully specific, and the same with, me killing Trigger, it was like you have to be like painfully specific or push back behind the team so that you don't get in front of it and in the way, right? And if you do that, that's when the memorable deaths happen, because it's just, the team kill thing is always just funny. I have a couple tags of Triggers now. It's just like in my inventory, and it's just like, oh, sorry, dude, I really didn't mean to do that.
It's awesome. I gotta say, my most memorable kill when I died, was my very first scav kill that I had on my own, right? So solo scav kill. And so I stalked this scav, and I was feeling like I was really something at this game. I killed him, and I waited for a minute, didn't see anybody coming, so I'm like, this is gonna be great. Trigger told me, he's like, when you're looting, make sure you go prone. So I walked over, crept over, went prone, started looting the scav. It was awesome. Took an extra second, stopped, listened. No one's around me. I'm like, this is great. I got my scav vest, and I'm going to go out, right? Because I just wanted to get something and sell it.
Right.
I stand up, instant dead. I was like, come on. And the best part about it is, like, someone was watching me, right? And they were just waiting for me to stand up so they could get a cleaner shot. And now I know exactly, what I did wrong there is I should have used that scav death and just stay hidden for their 10 minutes or however long it took and waited for someone to come loot it, use the scav as bait. But I didn't know that. It was my very first run, so it was hilarious. I actually, I almost slammed my mouse on my desk. I was so frustrated. It was awesome.
That's awesome.
Listen, you'll be level 21 and still doing that, because I did that yesterday. I had my questing item. I was trying to get out the vehicle exit, but insurance took all my money. Even though I checked like twice, insurance took my 7K out. And so I got the item. I'm with Dano from Hot Drop, and he's like, I got the button. I go there. I'm like, well, I won't do it. I check my docs case. No money. All right, well, I guess I got to go all the way to Crossroads.
Yep.
As I'm running, I just see a down player by like the boat extract, and I'm like, ooh, he looks juicy. I look around, I don't see anyone, but I didn't look around well enough, and I didn't have a big scope to check either. I had like maybe a 2x on, and I loot him anyway. He has an HK. I'm like, this is sweet, but I'm like, I'm just gonna take the HK and run. There's got to be someone around. Didn't matter. I bent down for a second to look at the guy and got shot in the head.
Yeah.
That was
so. When you're talking about the boat extract and you like see someone near it and you're like, they're looking juicy, like that's actually my most memorable death so far. And it's that just because your exfil counter is about to go off, don't stop moving, don't stop shaking, because I had an insane scav run on interchange, and I looted a guy's like, I don't even know. I think I had a Pilgrim.
Wait, didn't I show up for this one?
I think you did.
I think I just popped in at work or something, and I stepped away for a minute. It was the Christmas party.
Yes.
I step away for the Christmas party, walk back to my desk.
I killed a PMC as a scav, and then I looted a second one. I had like 3 bag inception. I probably had over $1 million worth of stuff in the bag. I had Killa armor. I had a what's the big helmet? I can't think of the name right now.
Was it Killa's helmet?
No, it wasn't Killa's helmet. It was the black one with the face shield. No.
The Atlan or something?
It was
one.
Big helmet. And I'm like, this is awesome. And I'm in the exfil, and the timer started. There's 4 seconds left, and I got clapped in the face at the exfil with probably 2 million rubles worth of stuff. So like, I don't ever stop moving now when I'm near an exfil, because I know that I just saw 4 seconds and I just stood there, and boom, right as like the 2-second timer hit. It was maddening. Like, it's why I use wired mice only, because if I had a wireless mouse, it would have been shattered on the wall. 100%.
Yeah, and it just comes back to, Sequish's tip of just take it slow, and also just be suspicious. Like, everything, if there's warning signs, listen to them.
No doubt. Sound is critical. Yeah, I mean, we hit a lot of great stuff. And there's tons of tips here that, again, when you're new, and I've said this a lot, and I guess my final point on this episode is there are so many tips that people will throw at you that you don't understand, and everyone kind of knows that you don't understand, and there's so many important tips that you do need to learn them over time, and you may hear stuff a bunch of times from people, different players, and you're just not going to get it, and that's okay. But just know that, like, it's coming from a place of, like, a painful moment. Of, like, here's how to loot. Here's how to move items out of your inventory fast. Like, saving time is important. And it's like what Ronald said. He looted, he proned, he did everything right. And then he stood up. And he died. And the best part about Tarkov is that he can look back at that memorable death and say, what did I do wrong? What did I right? What did I do wrong? And that's how you get better. And he's like, okay, I killed this scav, and then I went in and looted him. So maybe the play was he killed the scav, and then he waits for a minute to make sure the coast is clear. And it's every time you have a situation like that, you're going to get a little better, and a little better, and a little better. And that's the cool part about this game, is that, for one, it's kind of cool that you can't just jump in and be amazing at it, which I'm sure there's some people that jump in and are phenomenal out of the gate. But two, that there's just all this depth in every way you look, which is why I'm really, really digging it.
Yeah, I think this game's going to be on all of our list for a while.
Yep, I agree. I think we're definitely going to be playing this one for a while, and it's just beta, guys. I mean, just imagine what this is going to turn into. It's
Right.
crazy.
Yeah, the open world and, like, expansiveness that's going to be coming eventually is insane. And now that, Trigger mentioned they're on that new engine, it seems like they're able to push out content a lot faster. And I mean, when this thing started, it was just factory. And then it was customs, but it was only half of what customs looks like today. Even more choke points, if you can imagine.
Right.
And so now we're up to, what, like 6 maps or something like that. And, Reserve is a hit. Like an undeniable hit. There's so much more in Streets of Tarkov. Everything's going to come together in this whole insane way, and there won't be wipes at a certain point. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that economy shifts at when there's maybe a limited amount of things over time, like forever.
You just spoke my language in a way that you can't even imagine.
And I can't imagine because I don't come from games like this at all. Like there's just like. I've showed this game to people who play console still, and they look at the menu, like the looting, in-game and the stash and stuff, and they're like, that is just way too much. And I'm like, yeah, well, it would not be fun to try and do that with a controller, but, it's actually, like, part of the fun is, like, getting that inventory looking perfect.
But when you come from an MMO, man, this is what hooks an entirely different group of people into an FPS game. Because to me, the economy is so interesting. It gives a purpose to what you're doing that's just different.
Yeah. And knowing that you can sell something to somebody for way too much money and they might buy it anyway. And
Right.
Market manipulation, which is kind of a problem at the moment, but it's interesting that players can change.
It is and it isn't, because if it only matters if it's an item you need. But it's like you can go in and there's only 6 of these posted. I'm going to buy them out and post them for hire, risk your money and do it. But that's if you want to sit there and do that. You don't have to.
Yeah.
And the best part about it is and this is what isn't even present in games that I love the market in. So I love the auction house in World of Warcraft. But there's not really a good mechanism in World of Warcraft for setting prices. And what I mean by that is there's no vendors that will pay a good amount for things. Whereas in Tarkov, you can sell almost any item to one of the traders for a good amount. Meaning if you don't want to deal with the flea market or the auction house, you don't have to. And you're going to make decent money. If you sell guns to a mechanic, he's going to pay you pretty well for them. You can make more if you part it out and sell it on the flea market. Or if it's, if you're building out a gunsmith quest gun, you can make a premium on that because it just solves a task for somebody. But the nice part that they did here is that almost every item in the game matters for somebody at some point, and there's an established baseline value from the traders that help keep the economy stable-ish. And then there's times where nobody's found that stuff in raid. Like, just a really quick example, light bulbs recently. I don't know if they got added to a trade with a dealer. I don't know what happened, but they exploded, and now they're worth like 20K for a one-slot item. And that's right now today. Tomorrow, they could be worth nothing again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the cool part about playing the game and seeing how the market moves. So,
Yep, and the developers were super smart to give you an in-game encyclopedia that explains everything.
will you talk about that for a second? Because this is something that I noticed the first time you played when we were showing you over a Discord stream. And I brought up that you were looking at the skills. And then I'll be real honest with you. The in-game encyclopedia is not something I have ever opened. And you were like, this is awesome. Like, I love it. So why do you like it? What is so good about it?
I'll give you an example of just yesterday. I found a gun I'd never used, and I had to figure out what kind of ammo to use. And so I opened it up, figured out what kind of ammo I needed, went to the correct trader, bought some ammo, and then went back in with my PMC run, and I had a better gun to use. There's so many different types of attachments and ammo and just everything, right? Just you mentioned, that's the strength of the game. That for me, I was like, okay, this goes with this or goes with this. Or like, say you go to a trader and you open a gun that you've never used before. Like, okay, these 50 attachments are compatible with this or not, right? But you've got like maybe 15 or 20 slots of things that you can modify that gun with. And because there's an in-game handbook, you can find that stuff on the fly, like in real time. Like, you don't even have to click out of the trader. You just click handbook, find your thing, click back, and you're on that same screen again. And to me, that's actually something that a lot of other MMO games get wrong. The amount of items that you find to try to complete a mission or a quest or whatever you want to call it, is a daunting task for a new player to figure out what those things are. And like, for example, I had a quest to do. I call it a quest, but I had a mission or a skill or whatever. A task, I think, in this game is what it's called. There you go. So to go to customs, right? Go to customs and complete customs and find some stuff on customs and then kill 5 scavs on customs. I've never done that before. So I had to look and find out what I was looking for. So I figured that out. And then find the map, like Kev said earlier in the wiki for customs. Drop into customs and do some customs runs, right? To get that particular task done. And the in-game resource that they have for just explaining what the different things are is super, super valuable when you're used to dealing with an economy in a game as it is. And Tarkov really got that right. So that's why I think it's super useful.
That's awesome. Because, I've never even opened it up. I just click the little green button to get rid of the notification. Which, pro tip, if you don't want to look at the handbook, you don't want to see the encyclopedia, you can click the little green number box and it gets rid of the notification. You do not have to go in. I repeat, you do not have to go in to the encyclopedia and look at every single thing you discovered. I wasted half an hour doing this one day, and it almost made me quit the game. You don't have to do it.
Yeah. Also, pro tip, you can get XP by going to the traders and examining items, especially fence, since everything changes on fence so much. I pushed myself past a level just by examining a bunch of stuff on fence and refreshing it. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So it's the same amount of XP as you would get in a scav run or a PMC run. So
it's like 10 XP per item sometimes.
Yeah, which is actually a lot. It adds up. So everyone probably knew that, but I'm sure there's people that didn't.
No, but in the early game, it's critical because there's times where you're like, oof, I need 80 experience to get to level 5, so I unlock the flea market. Go search the traders and see if there's some stuff that you can unlock or if there's that little push. And again, later in the game, that's not worth a whole lot of experience because you need tens and hundreds of thousands of experience to level up. But in the beginning, it's actually significant what searching does. So, good point.
And you said you can go to the trader and maybe like fence and look at some stuff. To take that like one step further, you can go to the flea market once that's available to you. And I would at least go look at the barter items, the things that you're going to find in raid a lot. But you can also do it with all the attachments for the weapons and all this, different secret things. But look at those barter items in that menu and like search what that is, because that'll actually help you in raid, because your character, when it comes across something it's never seen before, it doesn't know what it is, and it gives you that like shrouded thing over top of the item. If you search that beforehand or out of raid, you'll spend less time having to search through items in the raid. So you'll actually get out of that proned position with the scav a little bit faster.
That's a good point.
But yeah, I think we've gone into enough. We could probably talk about this game for days.
I think we probably will. Well, I think that's a good time to kill it here. We're over an hour, which is awesome. We figured that one or two topics on Tarkov would get us about 30 minutes, which in gaming time is about an hour and a half. So we did it. So just really quick, like, Kev, thanks for coming on, man. Why don't you, tell people where they can find you and anything else you got going on, but thanks for coming on the show, man. I know that the video aspect's a little different compared to what we do on Winter, but this is awesome.
Yeah, it's a little something to get used to. Luckily, I got all my stuff here set up yesterday, so it doesn't look as barren as it once did. But yeah, if you're trying to find me, I'm always in the Winter Discord and other areas of Discord, but that's where you can, introduce yourself to me if you'd like to say hi. You could also find me on Twitter. It is just at the1Heart with a little underscore after that. And yeah, those are my two main places. I'm not too big on streaming or anything like that. So, it's the podcast and it's through Discord and Twitter. That's about it.
Nice. And I'll say this, like, Kev showed me a bunch of stuff when I started. I don't mean to speak for you and say go play with Kev, but he's really good at teaching games in general. He has a very different take on games than I do even, and that Ronald does. But if you've got questions on Tarkov, or if you're looking for people to group with, we can either direct you in a way and maybe get you connected, or we answer questions all the time. We love this stuff. So if you're trying to get into this game, or you're just not sure, or you're starting and not sure where to go, hit any of us up, because we'll absolutely help out. And I know that Kev does a really good job of that, because he was there when I was first showing, I think, Ronald's first game. I think you were there, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I was hanging out, I think we did a shoreline run, which is where I took everyone.
Yep. We totally did a shoreline run, so that was awesome.
Yeah. Trigger likes to get in there and just shoot things, and I am always eager to shoot things, but I need to know everything about everything first, and that includes, going and introducing myself to the people on the wiki, and, watching a million videos, and, just really, searching every item in the thing. I just need to know how all the mechanics work so I can, best work within the confines of the game. So, yeah, I'm a big nerding out kind of guy. I do a lot of the research for Winter.
And I'm the W key. I'm running at you. I'm coming for you.
Yeah. You are.
You totally are. Totally are.
I'll tell you the
We're all
damage values for
self-aware.
a gun.
We know.
Trigger will go. I'll tell you the damage values for a gun, and Trigger will tell you I killed him.
What's that gun he's shooting? Doesn't matter. He's dead.
Yep. And I looked at the interface for an hour before I ever clicked in the game, and Trigger's like, I played 4 games. Where are you? Let's do this.
Like, oh, hold on, my scab's on cooldown again. I was doing a run while you were doing that. Oh, it's good. So, obviously, guys, we love this game. It's new to us. It's not necessarily new. But let us know what you think about Tarkov. Even if you're not playing Tarkov and you somehow made it to the end of this video and you're not playing the game, good on you, and thank you, by the way. But let us know in the comments, like, what do you think about Tarkov? Does it have staying power? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? Let us know in the comments. But if you're looking for me, I stream on Twitch a few days a week, MTBtrigger. I'm on Twitter as well. You can also find me over on the Winter podcast if you're into PUBG. We talk a lot of PUBG over there, and we dive into other stuff as well. I'm sure we're going to be talking some Tarkov here in the near future. As you can kind of get a hint that both Kev and I really like this, and maybe we'll get Heath into it as well. But Ronald, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Yep, you can find me over at Ronald Gaming on the Twitters, and also check on XP Media as we're releasing WoW videos, WoW Classic content on a pretty regular basis. We're also going to be getting into some new topics here in 2020. Pretty excited to let some new stuff out there. So not going to announce it yet, but watch the channel. We'll see that coming. And lastly, just wanted to say thank you to Kev again. Once again, I've really enjoyed the Winner community and the podcast, and getting to know you and hanging out with you, playing games that we love. So thanks for coming on with us, and looking forward to playing more with you in the future.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It's always been a goal of mine to try and get on this show. So appreciate it.
Well, awesome, folks. That's it for us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Remember, you can find us all over the place, basically anywhere that you get podcasts. And what Ronald was talking about is youtube.com/XP Media Now. That's our main channel where you found this. You can click the link somewhere and subscribe there as well. And just wanted to say, have a great one. If you're in Tarkov, good luck on those scav runs, and let us know how they're going. Have a great one. We'll catch you soon.
See you next time.
See ya.